Hello everyone, it's Ren here. Welcome to this room, guys. I hope you are well today. Today I'm using a new angle in this room because it's a little bit later in the day. I'm trying to still catch some sunlight, so hopefully there will still be enough sunlight that the quality of the video can be decent. I would like to take a moment to think about another challenge that can attend the INFJ and the INTJ actually. Which I would like to call, by way of a preamble, the codification of experience and the codification of vision. Okay, so this is something that I'll probably be led to explore in my future book. But as always, as ever, I find it quite useful to hypothesize and test and practice and rehearse ideas via my videos first of all. Okay, so the codification of experience and the codification of vision particularly, right? We'll get around to what I mean by this and why I think this is a challenge in a second. Before, just consider that you can get my book, The Ecstatic Soul. It's available at the links below. It's a reference work on the INFJ. If you want to go in real depth about the INFJ personality, check it out at the links below. And you can also get my novel, which came out last year, The Infinite Castle, which is a very nice product. There's a fly there, and it's very, very new. It's new. It's a year old, but rumor has it that the main character is an INFJ, and if you want to support my work, my video work, my work in general, because it really helps, you can get this book. You can also get The Ecstatic Soul, or you can support me on Patreon, and I've had some new patrons join me lately, for which I am very, very grateful. It helps massively, as I always like to say, so you can consider joining me on the Patreon. There's a community there that's growing. So the codification of experience, the codification of vision, sounds slightly technical. So what do we mean by that? Okay. I mean by this that, if you like, an INFJ, given that they're an NI lead, they lead with NI, that's their dominant function. An INFJ is always going to be tempted to strongly identify with what distinguishes them most from other people. It's part of their ego identifications in some sense. Now, what distinguishes them most from other people is the fact that they lead with NI. So it's true that it's something that's that they have in common with the INTJ. However, if you consider the total population of INTJs plus the total population of INFJs, now these figures are shifting and they're not always exactly known, but we are reasonably certain that these are two of the more rare types, two of the rarest types, and that as a result, if you add up the populations of NI dominance, you can come pretty easily to the conclusion that NI dominants are, in fact, the rarest population. There's no rarer population than NI leads. It's more rare than TI leads, it's more rare than TE leads, it's more rare than FE leads, and so on and so forth. SE leads, too. So there's a certain objectification of rarity going on here. It's an ego identification, which is ironic, given that NI by itself is supposed to be a function that can bring you beyond ego, down the depth of the unconscious, in connection, in contact with the timeless symbols of the archetypes that put you in touch with eternity, timeless time, and should allow you to exceed or to seek a version of the transcendent. So there's an irony here when INFJs and INTJs strongly identify with their NI leadness as something to be proud of, as something to demarcate them from other people, because it represents a kind of ego identification relating to a function that's supposed to allow you to surpass ego. The idea of codification is linked to this, but develops the idea a little bit further, develops the motif a little bit further. Oftentimes, this is something that I've noticed with smart INFJs and smart INTJs. Because, again, if we are willing not to be too mystifying and mystical and mythological about NI leads. We have to come to the conclusion and admit that not all INFJs are smart, or that all INTJs are smart. But there are certainly smart INFJs and smart INTJs. And among smart INFJs and smart INTJs, there are many, based on my observations, you feel the temptation to codify. And by this I mean that they develop a very strong notion of what they are about and what their vision is of the right kind of society, of the right kind of intellectual pursuit, of the right kind of ethic, the right kind of morals, even the right kind of aesthetics, the right kind of politics. So if you like, they, because they're smart, they're able to synthesize different aspects that in some sense are also linked to their power of prescience, but they're able to solidify that into some articulation of vision, right? Again, vision taken in a specifically NI lead sense, not necessarily the same meaning that it might have in the case of other types. From the moment that you solidify something, right? Now, it is one of the theses of this book that you cannot really solidify a vision on the basis of your prescience, other than by making it a vocation to solidify it. That is to say, it's never something that you can achieve straight away, or even if across the span of a few years. It's a lifelong process. And in addition to being a lifelong process, it's a process that you cannot really succeed in if you don't allow yourself to rely on other people. It's particularly true of the INFJ because they lead, or they auxiliary lead with FE. When there is a certain kind of reticence about going out and sharing with other people, one way in which this reticence can be articulated is by articulating vision in a way that is more rigid. So in a way, it's not so much about, if you like, it's not about the rigidity of character at first, which suggests that, okay, like, we're not going to try to interact with this person or cooperate with this person because this person is antisocial or pathological and whatever, or just like not friendly. That can happen. Perhaps a little bit more often with INTJs, but it's certainly something that can happen. But there's another form of rigidity, which is not a personality rigidity to start with, but more a functional rigidity, or more a system rigidity that comes from a particular use of the NI function, which consists in not keeping the fountain of insights fluid, aggregating enough insights that can form a system, and from the moment that the system is formed, if you like, ossifying it. Well, ossifying is a very strongly valued term, but if you like, shaping it into a code such that the code is really articulating the vision. There are the norms in it, there are the rules in it, there's the overarching code in it, such that either, whatever statement is made by the INFJ or by another person is correct and fits within the code, or it's not and doesn't fit outside the code, right? And when there is this codification type of codification happening, by definition, there's something a little conservative about it. Often the NI lead will relate to their visionary system, if you want to call it that, in a way that, first of all, they themselves master more than anybody else, because they're the ones that came up with the code, even though they might not be aware of the move by which they actually turn their vision into some kind of code. But also, like, it's almost inevitable that other people who are outside will fall short of it. Either they will fall short of it because they don't understand all the intricacies of the code that they did not themselves come up with, or because it is in the very nature of someone who is not you, but who may be induced or encouraged or interested in collaborating with you, that they will want to bring something new, something to their, that comes from their own perspective, to make it dynamic, partly because that's the way of also having ownership over the process, of getting fun out of the process, feeling like they are actually contributed to the process, and generally because human beings, cannot help but be creative. So the more rigid you are about your NI code, the less open you will be to the contributions of the other people. And that can be often quite damaging. You could argue at one level that if it is a soft code, it might actually almost be a good thing, because you do not want your NI framework to be engulfed in completely extraneous matters. Statements of people who claim to be relevant but actually are not relevant. So, to have this kind of soft code, it's a very kind of delicate line, that's okay. But to have a very rigid code where you're essentially no longer open to anything else means that you are going to alienate yourself. You're going to codify yourself into alienation. And it's something that happens a lot with smart INTJs and smart INFJs. And so as a result of that, often you'll notice that when they argue with people, they seem to be a little bit solipsistic. They're rigid, they're conservative about their vision, and they often tend to think that everybody else is stupid because they don't get their vision. And I used to think it was just, kind of an ego thing, but I think sometimes it happens because it's a protection mechanism whereby you devise a code. The code is almost like an automatic trigger of NI banishment for INFJs. Remember that NI banishment is something that I propose as an alternative term for the door slam. It's like if someone is way, way off the code, then they will be excluded. Nothing has to be explicitly mentioned. Everything can remain implicit and tacit and automatic. But the INFJ will just say, okay, you're not getting it. You're not cracking the code at all here. I'm going to remain friendly to you, but we're not going to involve you in this NI side of my life anymore. But if you make the code too rigid, in some sense, you're going to condemn yourself to door slamming everybody. And that will give you a false sense of security, a false sense of maybe superiority for some people, but ultimately will condemn you to ossification, aridity, alienation, and NITI looping. And so what is subtle here is to appreciate the fact that beyond the personality of the particular INFJ or the particular INTJ, who may be open or not so open to other people's contributions, you have this idea of a codification of the NI experience, which ends up having a life of its own. If the vision is allowed to become too codified, so to speak, it almost becomes too difficult, regardless of the personality of the INFJ and the INTJ, or the INTJ, to reverse the matter, because the vision has become so deeply embedded into this code. It's almost a prisoner of it. So it's always important, I think, that as one is developing their, the insights of their prescience, to always keep in mind that there will be a temptation to codify, but it is good to not abuse this power. I think that in general, INFJs and INTJs will codify naturally. So it's not so much a question of how can I codify, because you will be doing it, but more so how can I codify in such a way that there will still be room within this framework for genuine outsider contributions that may not have been sanctioned to begin with by the language and rules and norms of the code, but which may in turn come to enrich it by redefining its boundaries. So this is something that I think is important to keep in mind, and something that I want to explore in a future book. But yeah, what do you think of this idea of NI and codification of vision, as a way to kind of alienate oneself, often unbeknownst to oneself? Love to know what you think. Let me know in the comments, guys. Don't forget, Patreon supporters, that really helps. Supporting my work by getting my books really helps too. Okay, I appreciate you all. See you soon. Bye-bye.